one hand, the other on his cheek, and his legs elegantly crossed. He means business and won't take any threats lightly, even from the top-ranked player in the world. Then, as he was thinking about what he would do to Ryu, the bodyguard finally arrived at his place and started knocking on his door. They greeted each other, and then the bodyguard, again with a smiling face, congratulated the Heavenly Demon for getting a unique class as well as surviving the round. The Heavenly Demon sat on his sofa and, while drinking his wine, said the second round was easy as a piece of cake. He obtained the unique class as he was lucky, and he is nothing special. The bodyguard said that luck is also a skill. Plus, getting second in the whole of Korea is not something that luck can achieve, and it's an honor that he is working with someone like the Heavenly Demon. While the Heavenly Demon was hearing all the praises with a little smile, sipping the wine and glaring at the bodyguard, he placed his wine on the table and said that the bodyguard must want something from him. That's why he is flattering him so much. While the bodyguard was silent. Then, with a gentle smile, the Heavenly Demon asked, while nodding his head, saying he can ask anything if he wants to, and not to be scared. It's not like he will eat him or something. The bodyguard hesitantly asked if the Heavenly Demon could tell how or from where he obtained his class. The Heavenly Demon, with a smile waving his hand, said it was nothing special, as he was just killing some monsters. And suddenly the system notified him that he obtained a class. That's all. Now let's take a closer look at the Heavenly Demon, grinning mischievously. He's got a little secret up his sleeve. You see, it's not because he battled some monsters that he landed himself a new class. Nope, he was just plain lucky. When that angel handed out unique classes to everyone, he didn't score any regular old skills. Instead, he got his hands on a nifty item that lets him switch classes. All he needs to do is reach level 10 and bam, he'll automatically become a Dark Knight. So when he bragged about his class, he wasn't fibbing. Luck was on his side big time. But here's the kicker. He can't spill the beans about this vital piece of info to just anyone, not even his closest comrade. You see, people can change their tune at the drop of a hat, and he's not about to trust anyone but himself. He's playing his cards close to his chest. Now our Heavenly Demon gets down to business, his tone serious as a heart attack. He's eager to hear how they got banged up during the second round. His eyes turn icy as he asks, "Was it Black Scythe?" It's a chilling look, let me tell you. The bodyguard, quick on his feet, reassures him it wasn't Black Scythe who did the damage. In fact, he was their savior in this mess. The Heavenly Demon raises an eyebrow, surprised for a moment. He wants the full scoop, every last detail. So the bodyguard spills the beans, telling the whole tale of what went down, and then he drops a concern bomb. He's worried that Aren might have taken a hit mentally from all of this. The Heavenly Demon sat there, deep in thought. His fingers were all twisted up, showing just how close he came to losing his trusted subordinate and nearly losing Aren. It was a real serious situation. He picked up his glass of wine from the table, taking a sip, and then he asked about the fate of the guys who tried to off his bodyguard. He wondered if Black Scythe had given them a painful end. The bodyguard spilled the beans, saying that Black Scythe had really given those guys a beating, tortured them till they were begging for death, but he didn't go all the way and kill them. The reason? Well, he figured there was no point in offing them, and he also mentioned that fewer people meant less spots for others to make it through. Hearing this, the Heavenly Demon nodded in agreement, thinking that Black Scythe wasn't completely off base. But he had a question in mind. What if those guys came back for revenge down the line? The bodyguard laid out the whole torture scenario, and the Heavenly Demon sipped his wine, going deep into thought. It seemed like Black Scythe wasn't exactly a do-gooder. He probably had his own motives for helping the subordinate. And our Heavenly Demon didn't like being in anyone's debt. So he decided that he had to meet this Black Scythe character soon. He stood up from his seat, thinking that when he did meet Black Scythe, he'd have to thank him from the bottom of his ass. Sorry, from the bottom of his heart. He made it clear that he wanted to keep an eye on Black Scythe, and that if the guy needed anything or asked anything of the bodyguard, he had to report it pronto. Being indebted wasn't his thing, and he wanted to stay on top of things. Then, as he was leaving, the Heavenly Demon stopped midway, turned back, and with cold eyes like a venomous snake, he addressed those who had attempted to harass Aren, referring to them as sons of bitches. He asked for their usernames. As we zoomed out, we saw Ryu standing outside the building of the Heavenly Demon. He was ready to leave the place as his work was done. Now he knew where the Heavenly Demon lived, and his plans would proceed smoothly. The Heavenly Demon was a very strong player, given his class, Dark Knight, which was terrifying. To use the skills of a Dark Knight, the user had to collect a certain aura called Dark Aura, obtainable only by killing a person and absorbing their life essence. This class suited someone like the Heavenly Demon, who had a penchant for killing, but he targeted only those he considered bad. Ryu pondered with a sweet face whether having someone like him on his team would be too dangerous. He decided he would manage it when the time came. For now, he had to go somewhere important. He hailed a cab and began to think about recruiting her. The scene shifted to the store where Ryu had bought the lottery tickets. Inside the store, the owner was holding his head, clearly upset and frustrated. He expressed his despair, not knowing what to do. Just then, someone entered the store. It was Juri, the store owner's daughter. Seeing her father in distress, Juri approached him and asked what was wrong. Her father hesitated at first, saying it was nothing, but Juri persisted in her questioning. Finally, he admitted that the government had banned lottery tickets. This sudden turn of events had left him in a difficult situation. He explained that a player had recently won multiple lottery tickets, each worth millions of dollars, and the government suspected it was due to some player skill or related issue. As a result, they had banned lotteries all over Korea, and since their store primarily relied on selling lottery tickets, they were now struggling with very few customers. Juri, with a warm smile, assured her father not to worry. She mentioned that she would be graduating soon and would find a part-time job to help with their financial situation during this emergency. Her father, however, insisted that her main focus should be on her studies, as her dream was to become a doctor, and he would handle the money problems. With a bit of a neutral expression, Juri revealed that she had given up on becoming a doctor due to the current situation in the world. Her father suddenly realized the weight of his worries and anxieties, expressing concern about what might happen in the next round and the thought of something happening to Juri being too much for him to bear. He confessed that, despite wanting to be normal, he couldn't help but worry, and if things continued this way, he felt like he might go crazy. Seeing her father in such a state, Juri reassured him, holding his hand and telling him not to worry. She explained that now that she had a class, she wouldn't easily die in some otherworldly place. Her father, still puzzled, asked what she meant by having a class. In response, Juri used her skill. She placed her hand close to her father's hand, and a bright yellow light emitted from her hand, entering her father's body. The sudden display of her power left her father shocked and bewildered. With a bright smile, Juri raised her hand, which emitted a radiant yellow light. She explained to her father that he should be feeling a bit better now because of her unique skill, which she had gained from the other world. Her father indeed felt a lot better than before, and praised Juri for her abilities. He thanked her, and she assured him that he could let her know whenever he was feeling down, and she would use her skill to relieve his worries. With great enthusiasm, Juri encouraged her father to cheer up, and he chuckled, agreeing that whatever would happen in the future, they shouldn't worry about it now. They would face it together when the time came. Just then, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of a customer. Juri's dad turned to welcome the customer, but was immediately shocked when he saw that it was none other than Ryu, the person responsible for the government's ban on lottery tickets. Juri whispered to her dad, asking who he was, and her father panic-strickenly replied that he was the person who had won 115 lotteries, all in first place. Due to his winnings, the government had banned lotteries, causing significant trouble for their store. Ryu, with a pat on his shoulder, slowly approached the store owner and asked if he remembered him, mentioning that he had bought many lottery tickets from here a month ago. Juri's dad hesitated but admitted that he did remember. Before he could say anything more, Ryu bowed down, startling her father. Ryu apologized, stating that because of him, the store owner was in trouble. He had seen on the news that after he had won the lottery, the government had banned it, and since the store's main income came from lottery ticket sales, the store owner was facing difficulties. Ryu sincerely expressed his regret. Hearing and seeing Ryu, Juri stared at him, feeling somewhat tense and nervous for some reason. Her father waved his hand, saying that it wasn't Ryu's fault and that it was okay. They weren't starving because they couldn't sell lottery tickets anymore. However, Ryu insisted that it wasn't okay. He believed that since he had caused this trouble, he should be the one to solve it. Ryu handed Juri's father a white envelope and explained that it was compensation. Inside the envelope was $10,000. Before they could say anything, Ryu left, leaving them bewildered. Holding the envelope, Juri's father deep in thought. Juri and her dad decided to return the money, and Juri hurriedly ran to catch up with Ryu. Then we see Juri finally catching up with Ryu, shouting his name from behind. Hearing her, Ryu stopped, and as she came closer, she wore a curious expression and asked if he was Ryu. Ryu in turn asked if she knew him, and she hesitantly replied that they were in the same class at college. However, Ryu still didn't recognize her, which left her a bit surprised. She asked if he really had never seen her in class. Ryu responded with a warm smile and explained that he was a single, virgin, a shut-in loser, and not good at socializing with people. Then he admitted that he did know her because she was the one he was after for his team. She possessed buffing and incredible support skills, and he had met her in his 27th life on the 7th round, where he had saved her life. There, he had found out that she was his classmate, so it wasn't entirely a lie when he told her he didn't recognize her. Juri, a bit hesitantly, asked Ryu if they could go to a park to talk. Ryu, with a warm smile, nodded and agreed. The scene shifted, and we saw both of them sitting on a bench in the park, somewhat resembling a couple on a date. Juri handed the money envelope to Ryu, insisting that they couldn't accept such a large amount of money. Ryu, knowing that this was precisely why he had given her the money, refused to take it back, which startled Juri. She strongly insisted on him taking at least some of the money, as her hand was starting to hurt from holding it for so long. Ryu firmly declined, explaining that he had given the money to the store owner because he felt guilty for being the reason behind the store's loss of income. Therefore, he couldn't take it back. Hearing this, Juri began to panic, saying that the amount was too large, and they didn't know how to repay his kindness, which was exactly what Ryu wanted. Juri then had an idea and suggested that she would take $1,000 and return the remaining $9,000. Ryu questioned why she was deciding what to do instead of the store owner, and she responded by revealing that the store owner was her dad, so she had the authority to make such a decision. Then, a bit sad, Juri mentioned that she still couldn't believe that Ryu had never seen her in class, as she immediately recognized Ryu when she saw him in the store. Then, her expression turned a little angry, and she pouted, and seeing her Ryu to apologize to her in his thoughts. Then suddenly Juri, enthusiastic, moved closer to Ryu and urged him to look at her closely and remember her face and name, Juri. Ryu responded with a warm smile, assuring her that he would remember her. Realizing that she was very close to Ryu, Juri blushed slightly. However, her mood shifted once more, and she became a bit sad and depressed, feeling like introducing herself to her classmate at the end of their graduation was a bit awkward. Ryu, still smiling warmly, comforted her, saying that it was okay because now they knew each other. He suggested that even after their graduation, they could meet. Then, he asked if she would mind giving him her number. Juri blushed a little and hesitated for a moment, but eventually she gave her number to Ryu. Ryu mentioned that friends usually had each other's numbers, and with that settled, he said he had to go and left. Juri noticed that she hadn't been able to return the money in the end, but that wasn't the main concern now. Her heart raced wildly, and she felt overwhelmed. She started to feel shy and blush, confessing that she liked Ryu. She explained that she had seen Ryu in her first year, getting brutally bullied, and from then on, whenever she saw Ryu being bullied, she would call the cops for help out of pity for him. Over time, she had started following Ryu regularly and had found herself developing feelings for him. However, she had never mustered the courage to confess her feeling. Now that she had met him again, and Ryu had helped her family, she decided to be more open about her affection. With a slightly tilted head, and while holding her hair, Juri asked if she could invite Ryu for a meal. Now Ryu was just chilling on his bed, phone in hand, chatting it up with Juri. She asked if he'd eaten yet, and if he hadn't, could they grab some lunch together around 1? Ryu was like, "Sure thing, I'll foot the bill." They chatted for a bit, but Ryu couldn't help but notice that Juri was being extra friendly and trying real hard to please him. He figured maybe she was really grateful because he'd given her a nice chunk of money, but something about her attitude seemed a bit off to Ryu. He thought to himself that whatever the reason, getting closer to Juri like this might mean he could recruit her into his team down the line. So he put on this serious face, got up from his bed, and made a declaration that he'd do whatever it takes to keep Juri alive until the last round. So guys, today's like goal is 4,200. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I thank you all from the bottom of my ass, bottom of my heart, for supporting the channel. Now let's continue. A little while later, Ryu was all dressed up in a black shirt and black pants. Wani, his little bro, saw him like that and got a bit puzzled. He asked Ryu where he was off to. Ryu simply said he was meeting a friend. Now that threw Wani for a loop, cause you see, Ryu's a single virgin loser with no friends. Plus, he hardly ever dresses up and takes showers, so it was a shocker. So, Wani got straight to the point and asked, "Is it a friend or a girl?" Hearing that, Ryu didn't see any issue and asked if he couldn't have female friends. Then he hit Wani with a warm smile and told him to go ahead and have lunch without waiting for him. With that, he left to meet up with Juri, leaving Wani in a state of shock. It was a lot to take in, and he had to process it all. Finally, it hit him. Is Ryu really going on a date with a girl? The scene changed, and we found ourselves at a fancy restaurant called Steakhouse. It was one of those really expensive joints. Inside, Ryu and Juri were having lunch. Ryu had this warm smile on his face as he asked Juri if she liked the juicy steak they were having. Juri, still kinda lost in her daydream, only caught the word like and blushed a bit, asking, "Do I like what?" Ryu clarified, saying he meant the steak, and Juri finally replied that yes, the steaks were absolutely delicious. Ryu told her to go ahead and enjoy as much juicy steak as she wanted, but you could feel the awkwardness settling in. They both sat there, not saying much, and the atmosphere got a bit uncomfortable. Juri was getting more and more shy, not sure how to break the silence. She told herself to be brave and muster up the courage to say something. Finally, she asked Ryu how he managed to win first place in the lottery 115 times. Ryu, with that same warm smile, replied that an old man with a pig on his head came to him in a dream and gave him the winning numbers. Hearing this, Juri tried to picture that old man with a pig on his head and asked Ryu how much he'd won from all those lottery wins. She made it clear that if Ryu didn't want to share, it was totally fine. Ryu, still with that gentle smile, told her that he'd won enough money that he never had to worry about finances for the rest of his life. But to use that money, he'd have to be alive in the next round. Hearing this, Juri hurriedly inquired about Ryu's experience in the first round of the tower. She shared that it felt like being thrown into hell for her, as she had never even killed an ant before, let alone facing the terrifying challenge of taking down 100 goblins. Ryu, with a neutral expression, admitted that it had been quite a challenging experience for him too. Juri then asked Ryu about the zone he was in. Ryu casually sipped his water and replied that he couldn't remember the exact zone number, but the last digit was a 5. Juri, feeling a bit shy, shared that her zone number ended with 7, so it was a shame that they wouldn't be able to meet in the dungeons. She had hoped their zones would be the same. Ryu, with a reassuring smile, thought to himself that she shouldn't be disappointed because in the future, all the zones would merge into one, and they would definitely meet. Juri then inquired about Ryu's level, to which he replied that he was at level 10. She excitedly shared that she was also level 10 and had acquired a class called Supporter. Ryu, intrigued, asked if that meant she could buff other people's stats like in-game. Juri, now more confident, explained that her skill was called Bless, and by using it, she could enhance all the stats of whoever received her blessing. She activated her skill, and a green light emanated from her hand as she placed it close to Ryu's head. A magical pattern formed, and the system notified Ryu that all his stats had been increased by 50%, an effect that would last for 3 hours. Impressed, Ryu complimented Juri, calling her skill cool. Deep down, he already knew about her skill from his previous life, but the feeling of sharing a meal with a friend was new to him, and he genuinely enjoyed it. The awkwardness that had initially hung in the air had dissipated, and they both continued to enjoy their meal with smiles on their faces. Then, Ryu expressed his gratitude to Juri for the buff, feeling invigorated by the enhancement. Juri, however, gave him a playful glare before breaking into a joyful smile. She assured Ryu that it was no big deal, and that if he ever needed anything from her in the future, he could call her any time, and she would be there with her thing. Ryu simply nodded in agreement, saying, "Okay." Then Ryu inquired about what Juri wanted to tell him on the phone, and Juri seemed a bit startled, realizing she should have mentioned it earlier. She playfully scolded herself for being a bit slow. However, with a gentle and warm smile, she began expressing her gratitude to Ryu for the money he had given them. She explained that the money had been a tremendous help, as her family was in debt, and they had managed to repay all their loans thanks to Ryu's assistance. Her father was now happy, all thanks to Ryu's generosity. She also promised that she would find a way to repay the money in the future. Ryu was a bit surprised by this expression of gratitude and told Juri that she didn't need to repay him. He reminded her that he had already acknowledged that he was responsible for her father losing customers, so it was only fair for him to compensate for it. Hearing this, Juri stood up, clapping her hands, and excitedly mentioned that if Ryu didn't want money, she could offer him something else. Then, her hand started to emit a bright yellow light, and she took out an item from her inventory. Curious, Ryu asked her what it was, and Juri extended her hand, revealing a purple crystal with unusual patterns. She admitted that she didn't know what it was, but she had obtained it while killing goblins. She insisted that Ryu take it, and said he couldn't refuse. The scene then shifted to outside the restaurant where Juri bid farewell to Ryu. Ryu, in return, wished her to take care and not to die in the next round. After Juri left the park, Ryu wore a serious expression and opened his inventory to check the description of the peculiar crystal she had given him. The system notification revealed that it was a low-rank purple mana stone. Ryu hadn't expected to obtain this item so soon, especially not from Juri. As Ryu held the purple mana stone high in his hand and gazed at it with a contemplative look, he remarked that he knew exactly what this item was, but hadn't anticipated receiving it, especially not from Juri. He proceeded to explain that once a player reached level 20, they unlocked a feature called Combination. This feature allowed players to fuse mana crystals like the purple one with their equipment, granting the equipment unique skills or attributes. There were 7 types of mana stones: red for damage, orange for strength, yellow for luck, green for agility, blue for intelligence, and dark blue for defense. Ryu emphasized that the purple one was the rarest, with a very low chance of obtaining it. Unlike the other crystals that increased specific attributes, the purple stone enhanced skills or attributes for all stats. With a gentle smile, Ryu expressed his luck at receiving the purple mana stone for free, considering it a fortunate turn of events. He then realized that his luck stat was doubled due to the Bless skill. Was that the reason he was having such a lucky day? However, Ryu's meeting with Juri was primarily thanks to her Bless skill. With only 30 minutes left until the buff expired, Ryu wanted to open the golden mysterious pouch he had acquired in round 2, capitalizing on his doubled luck stat. But before that, Ryu reached into his pocket and pulled out a packet full of small mealworms. Still holding the worms with a serious expression, Ryu proceeded to explain that his slaughterer skill increased all his stats by 1% for each opponent he killed, and this applied to bugs as well. With that, he threw the packet full of bugs onto the ground and, with a solemn face, offered his apology. Then, he began stomping on the bugs. As he continued to stomp, the system notified him of his progress. 45 opponents killed, then 67, until he finally reached his 100th kill, causing all his stats to increase by 100%. After this bug-squashing exercise, Ryu checked his status window. His luck stat had skyrocketed to an impressive 45. Initially, his base luck was 15, but with the help of his slaughterer skill, he had boosted his stats by 100%, bringing his luck stat to 30. The Bless skill from Juri had further increased his stats by 50%, resulting in his luck reaching 45. Ryu then retrieved the mysterious gold pouch, and the system notified him that it was a gold pouch, and upon opening it, one could receive gold coins ranging from 1 to 9,999, determined randomly based on their luck stat. Ryu cautiously opened the pouch, holding high hopes, but expecting to receive no more than 6,000 gold. However, what he witnessed left him utterly astonished, his eyes wide open in surprise. The system notified him that he had obtained a whopping 9,999 gold. Seeing this, Ryu couldn't contain his happiness, exclaiming that today, the god of luck was truly on his side. With this newfound wealth, he now had a total of 16,249 gold. Ryu added that he could buy an epic item with this amount and still have money left over. However, he had no plans to spend any money at the moment, as the item he desired would become available in the shop after 2 weeks. With that decision made, Ryu closed his status window and inventory. The scene then shifted back to Ryu's building. As Ryu entered the room, he greeted Wani, who was sipping hot chocolate. Seeing Ryu, Wani's eyes sparkled with excitement as he eagerly asked how Ryu's date had gone. Ryu, on the other hand, was momentarily taken aback by the question and paused. Without offering any details about the date, Ryu simply sat on the sofa. Wani, sensing his brother's reluctance to discuss it, asked if Ryu wasn't coming home after a date with the girl he had feelings for. Ryu, feeling a bit awkward, replied, dismissing the question and redirecting the conversation by asking what Wani had eaten for lunch. Wani, feeling comfortable in his seat, replied that he had enjoyed black bean noodles, emphasizing how delicious they were. Ryu, with a joyful smile, assured Wani that he could have ordered something even better. Wani pouted, defending his choice of black bean noodle, explaining that he had been craving them for a long time. Ryu reflected on how just 1 month ago, they were in a dire situation and had to beg for food. Now, with money, Wani still enjoyed his previous lifestyle of food, which Ryu found perfectly fine. He was genuinely happy to see Wani enjoying himself. As Wani engrossed himself in watching the epic battle between Luffy and Kaido in one piece, his excitement palpable, Ryu's thoughts were elsewhere. Ryu had his mind on the price of Bitcoin, contemplating that it would rise by a significant margin in the next 2 weeks before potentially crashing. He knew he needed to withdraw his money before the crash, but he had some plans in mind. One of those plans was to buy a Lamborghini. To make this dream a reality, Ryu first decided to obtain his driver's license. He took the driving license exam and aced it with a remarkable 95% score, leaving everyone astonished. With his license secured, Ryu wasted no time and placed an order for a Lamborghini. Finally, the day arrived when the price of Bitcoin increased by a factor of 10, prompting Ryu to swiftly withdraw all his Bitcoin holdings. Now, with a devilish grin on his face, Ryu was visibly pleased with his actions. Seeing him smile like that, Wani couldn't contain his curiosity and asked if something good had happened. Ryu explained that he had just sold all his Bitcoin and made a massive profit. When Ryu asked how much he had earned, he revealed that he had made 300 billion won, equivalent to a staggering $222,662,700. Wani was utterly shocked by the astronomical amount, and he started to shake with disbelief. Ryu casually mentioned that they had multiplied their initial investment by 20-fold and sat back on the sofa, relaxed. Now, Wani, still in disbelief, said when Ryu first told Wani he invested all their money into Bitcoin, Wani wanted to stop Ryu, but now to think they hit the mega jackpot. Ryu, with a warm smile, replied that he was just lucky as he himself didn't know they would have won that big. That's why he withdrew all the money, as greediness leads to destruction. Then Wani asked, "That means Ryu will not invest in Bitcoin anymore?" And Ryu replied, "Yes, no more Bitcoin stuff." Hearing this, Wani let out a sigh of relief as he took a sip of his hot coffee. However, Ryu dropped another bombshell. He planned to invest all the money into stocks. Wani was so shocked that he ended up spilling his hot chocolate, and with teary eyes, he asked Ryu why he was taking such a risky step when they already had enough money to secure their future generations. Ryu remained cool and reassured Wani not to worry, insisting that everything would work out and that he should trust him. Ryu pointed his finger upwards, explaining that an old man with a pig on his head had come to him in a dream and predicted the rise of Bitcoin, which had led to profits. The same old man had also given him insights into which stocks would increase in value, further reinforcing his confidence in the stock market. Hearing this, Wani, still stressed, believed what Ryu told, saying to do as Ryu wished, but at least to keep some money in reserve just in case something happens. Ryu understood Wani's concern, but knew the future and believed that his investments would pay off. Now scrolling his phone, searching multiple companies, Ryu wanted to invest in the company named Heavenly Demon Consulting. This is a no-name company now, but in the future this will become the #1 in Korea and dominate everyone. Ryu purchased a 31% share of the company, ensuring that he would have some influence as it grew. Then a murmur broke Ryu's attention, and as he turned back, he saw Wani intensely praying to the old man with a pin in his head, saying, "Please make the company that Ryu is investing in grow." Seeing this, Ryu let out a joyful smile. Then, the night had arrived, and Ryu lay on his bed, eagerly anticipating this day. He opened the store window, revealing a list of various items. Among the options was one called Today's Item. Clicking this option allowed you to obtain a random item ranging from normal rank to high rank. To unlock this chest, you had to pay 4,600 gold. It might seem foolish to open a random chest at such a high price, risking getting a common rank item worth only a few gold. But Ryu knew the future. He had opened this chest 99 times, every other day, and he knew which item would appear. With confidence, he opened the random chest, and voila! Ryu received an epic item called the Skeleton Bone Necklace. It was an epic item with a unique effect. After defeating an opponent, it would increase the intelligence stat by 3 points and attack speed by 1. However, this effect would only last for 1 round, and it was capped at 25%, meaning Ryu could only increase his stats by a maximum of 25%. Ryu then used the 50% coupon he had obtained from a class-changing quest to purchase the necklace at half price, which amounted to 2,300 gold. Now Ryu was fully prepared for the next round. As time passed quickly, the day arrived, March 1st, 2023. Slowly but surely, one by one, the players started to appear on the 3rd round of the dungeon. A dense and tense atmosphere enveloped the area as the players whispered among themselves, wondering what this place was. The players began to explore their surroundings, realizing that this place was once a village that now lay in ruin. They saw the remnants of what used to be a thriving village, but it had been reduced to rubble. A massive castle gate loomed over the village, surrounded by the remnants of a fortress. The atmosphere was thick with tension and uncertainty. Suddenly, a massive purple crystal materialized in the middle of the village, causing panic among the players. Anxiety filled the air, but Ryu, standing calmly in the background, didn't seem fazed. Then Ryu noticed the Musclehead. Some players started to gossip while seeing the Musclehead, saying the last round he became the zone leader by threatening everyone, and he literally started slaughtering whoever didn't obey his command. Some even started saying the Musclehead is not worthy of becoming a zone leader, and Black Scythe should be the zone leader. Then one player, in panic, said to his friend not to say it so loudly as if the Musclehead heard him. He could use his authority skill on him and make his life miserable. But he, with an arrogant tone, replied that he doesn't care, as the Musclehead can only use his skill 10 times, and after that, he is no more than an ordinary player, so what is there to be scared of? Now hearing this, the Musclehead got furious and started shouting, calling them bastards, but the whispering didn't stop, and the players again started to make fun of the Musclehead. Now the Musclehead got furious. His blood started to boil, and he turned with great force, started shouting, asking who Mother asterisk air just spoke. But everyone was just silent, and the Musclehead couldn't do anything in this position. He started to grind his teeth in anger, thinking he knew this would happen, only if that bitch Angel didn't reveal everything related to his skill. Things would have been different, but then something funny happened. Well, you see, suddenly Youngman came and arrived on the scene with quite a dramatic entrance. He forcefully bowed his head before the Musclehead, exclaiming a loud and cheerful, "Hello?" The Musclehead was taken aback by this sudden display and inquired about the newcomer's identity. Youngman, his voice tinged with submission, introduced himself as Youngman and respectfully addressed the Musclehead as his senior. He explained that he had come to pay his respects to the Musclehead. This response left the Musclehead somewhat puzzled. He questioned whether he knew Youngman, to which Youngman replied that they were strangers. However, he confessed that his life's ambition was to become a gangster just like the Musclehead, and that he was a massive fan, and how Youngman begged the Musclehead that he wants to come inside. He wants to come under the Musclehead's team. The Musclehead couldn't help but be surprised by Youngman's unusual aspirations. He wondered, what kind of crazy guy dreams of becoming a gangster like me? Before the Musclehead could respond, Youngman just came to his knees and bowed his head, saying he will serve the Musclehead for the rest of his life, and will do anything that the Musclehead will say. And he requested, saying, "Please, I beg you, take me in." Now seeing this, the Musclehead started to laugh, thinking he has seen all types of psychos in his life, but it is the first time he saw this type of psycho. Then the Musclehead extended his finger, pointing towards the gathered players, questioning whether something was wrong with Youngman's eyes. He remarked that everyone seemed to dislike Youngman, yet he wanted to join his team. Youngman, filled with excitement, clenched his fist and tapped his chest, wearing a wide smile. He made it clear that he doesn't care what other players think or say. He just wants to come inside the Musclehead, and he can do anything to come inside the Musclehead. Now the Musclehead was hearing this with a serious face, and after a pause, the Musclehead, with a grinning smile, replied that he likes people like Youngman, so he would take Youngman under him, take responsibility, and raise Youngman. Hearing this, Youngman was overwhelmed with gratitude, repeatedly bowing and expressing his thanks. It was truly an honor for him. Meanwhile, the other players couldn't help but gossip about the unexpected partnership. They found it hard to believe that Youngman had teamed up with the Musclehead, and some questioned Youngman's sanity. However, as they observed the Musclehead and Youngman laughing and chatting happily, they couldn't resist making remarks. They suggested that there is a saying that birds of a feather flock together, so it's not weird seeing one piece of shit getting attracted toward another piece of shit. So today's like goal is 4,700. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's continue. Then out of nowhere, the angel descended from the sky with a dazzling entrance, startling all the players. She floated in the air for a moment, seemingly calculating something. She then announced that there were 90 fewer people than in the previous round. Hearing this, the players started to get confused, asking, "What does that mean?" But before they could say anything further, a quest window came in front of them, stating that their quest was to protect the purple crystal from being destroyed by monsters. Only 1,255 players would survive this round. Now, seeing that there were 90 fewer players than before, confusion and panic spread among the participants. The angel, still floating with her hand on her lips, politely explained that she couldn't go to the real world and kill anyone, as that would mean those players died in the real world for some reason. A player shouted in shock and panic, realizing that only 1,225 players would survive this time, which was 1/4 of the total players. As all the players slowly noticed it, they started to panic, and some started to scream. A player asked the angel, "Is there an error? In every round, only half of the players survive. So how?" But before he could finish his sentence, the angel burst into laughter. She started to laugh loudly while holding her stomach, her laughter echoing throughout the entire area. So there they were, the whole gang of players listening to that angel with their eyes wide in horror and panic. She fired back at him, calling them filthy monkeys and saying angels ain't no dummies. She made it clear there was no error in the rules. With a point of her finger in a cheerful tone, she dropped a bombshell on him. She reminded him that everyone had survived the last round, so it was only natural that only a quarter of them would make it through this time. That sent the already freaked-out players into an even deeper panic. The angel's look turned deadly serious as she laid out the quest details. In this village, there were 4 castle gates, and every 30 minutes, monsters would start pouring out of them. Their mission? Protect the purple crystal from getting wrecked by these beasties. There were going to be 4 waves of monsters, and if they couldn't keep that relic safe, they'd be hit with a big, fat penalty. To make things a bit easier, she said they'd be ranking players based on the number of monsters they killed. That's how they'd figure out the top 25% who'd get to live. And just to sweeten the deal, she dropped the monster's power by 1/3. Now, there was this musclehead in the group, grinning like he had it all figured out. He thought this round would be a cakewalk. All he had to do was slaughter a bunch of monsters, and he even had that authority skill to back him up. Easy peasy, right? The angel clapped her hands, making sure she got everyone's attention, saying she almost forgot to say the most important thing. She stared at the musclehead and said that in the last round, life is a documentary became the zone leader, right? So he can use the authority skill to command 10 people without any class. Then she questioned, did no one think about what will happen if the zone leader dies? And as soon as the musclehead heard this, he became like a statue without saying anything. Then the angel, with a wicked smile, explained that if the zone leader dies from a monster or any natural cause, like if he killed himself or fell down on a dagger and died, the zone leader's position will remain empty and they will have to vote again to decide who will become the next zone leader. But what if the zone leader got killed by another player? The musclehead was still frozen in his position in shock when the angel continued that if a player kills the zone leader, then the one who will kill him will automatically become the zone leader. And he can also use 10 authority commands regardless of what the previous zone leader had used. As soon as she said this, all the players turned their gaze toward the musclehead with a deadly look, like they would eat the musclehead alive. Then the angel clapped her hands again, saying the monsters will appear in 10 minutes, and she hopes everyone will work together and survive. But then she smiled, looking like she was too happy, enjoying the moment and glaring at the musclehead, saying that she hopes everyone works together, but she is not sure if he will be able to. With those last words, she vanished, leaving the musclehead shaking in anger. Then the musclehead started to scream in anger, cursing the angel and calling her a bitch. However, a whisper caught his attention, and when he turned around, he noticed the players were ready with their weapon, ready to attack. Seeing this, the musclehead also took out his dagger in anger and started to shout, saying if they want to die this badly, they can come and he will fulfill their wishes. But the players didn't back down, explaining that the musclehead could only use his authority 10 times, and if they all attacked him together, he wouldn't be able to defend himself. Just when tensions were escalating, an unexpected turn of events occurred. A heavy, commanding footstep echoed, drawing everyone's attention. It was none other than Ryu, who walked past the players with a majestic aura. They made way for him as he approached the musclehead. Noticing Ryu coming toward the musclehead, he started to panic and asked, "Why is Ryu coming close toward me?" But Ryu didn't say anything, and he just walked close to the musclehead, and with a chilling cold tone said, "Don't be afraid. I'm not here to kill you. If I wanted to kill you, you wouldn't be alive in the first place. I'm here to say something to you." The musclehead just stood there with a sweaty face. Then the musclehead, still scared but not showing it to everyone, replied that he's not scared at all and he's listening, so Ryu can say whatever he wants. With a touch of arrogance, the musclehead added that although Ryu was strong, if they were to fight, he would make sure to at least chop off one or both of Ryu's hands. He declared that he wasn't scared of Ryu's threats. However, before he could finish his sentence, Ryu began to smile wickedly. This sent shivers down the musclehead's spine. Then Ryu, with a cold expression and a cool pose, hand in his pocket, and the other holding his black scythe, suggested that the musclehead seemed to be in a tight spot. He proposed an offer. How about he protect the musclehead? The musclehead was left utterly bewildered and stood there in confusion as Ryu explained that he will stand behind the mushhead and protect his ass so that no one can fuck his ass up. Now hearing this, all the players got shocked, saying, "Why is Black Scythe protecting the musclehead? So if they want to kill the musclehead, they have to fight Black Scythe too. And if it is, they will not be able to face two strong opponents." This declaration sent shockwaves through all the players. They couldn't understand why Black Scythe, Ryu, would protect the musclehead ass. They realized that if they wanted to kill the musclehead, they'd have to face off against Black Scythe too, and that it's impossible to fight against Black Scythe. Meanwhile, the musclehead was listening to the whispers, thinking that just the name of Black Scythe was enough to strike fear into the players. With a somewhat unsure and cautious tone, the musclehead asked what Black Scythe wanted in return for his protection. Ryu, always cool and collected, casually replied that he didn't want much. Then, his expression turned serious as he stated that the only condition was for the musclehead to follow his orders. This condition seemed to take the musclehead by surprise, as he realized that Black Scythe was essentially offering him a subordinate role. Curious and cautious, the musclehead inquired why Black Scythe was making such a kind offer. Ryu cryptically replied that he couldn't tell him. When the musclehead asked about the nature of the orders he'd have to follow, Ryu gave a similar response, saying he couldn't reveal that either. He advised the musclehead not to talk too much and simply follow his commands. He doesn't have the entire day here. The musclehead found himself in deep thought. He didn't want to become Black Scythe's subordinate, but he feared what might happen if he rejected the offer. Would Black Scythe come after him? In a state of panic, he nervously gulped, feeling the pressure of the decision weighing on him. Ryu urged him to give his response quickly, as the other players were eagerly waiting for his answer. Hesitantly, the musclehead declined Black Scythe's offer, stating that he wouldn't come under his command. Ryu fixed him with a cold, deadly look, and the other players started to get happy, saying, "Is the musclehead dumb?" If he had accepted the offer, Ryu would have protected his ass, but no, because of his ego, he rejected the offer. The atmosphere grew tense as a girl prepared her long sword and her friend readied his spear. Slowly, everyone geared up to attack the musclehead. Ryu, on the other hand, distanced himself from the scene, stating that he no longer cared about what happened to the musclehead. Whether he lived or died was none of his concern. Just as the players were about to make their move, the system sent out a notification. The first wave of monsters would arrive in a minute, catching everyone off guard. Their priorities shifted instantly, and protecting the crystal became their top concern. The players abandoned the idea of attacking the musclehead. Seeing an opportunity, the musclehead decided to follow Ryu, thinking that whatever Ryu was up to might be a better option. As he trailed Ryu, he noticed that Ryu was heading toward the third castle entrance, which was unguarded. Suddenly, a loud sound signaled the start of the first wave of monsters, startling everyone. Slowly, the massive castle gates began to creak open, and a chilling wind swept through, making everyone shiver. The system then delivered a grim notification. 9,800 weakened goblins were approaching, intent on destroying the crystal. Panic and fear washed over the players as they stood, clutching their weapons tightly. With creepy smiles and eerie noises, the bloodthirsty goblin horde emerged from behind the gates. They looked as if they hadn't eaten in 1,000 years, their hungry eyes fixed on the defenseless players. Even the musclehead got panicked as he himself didn't expect 9,800 goblins to come. Without wasting any time, the musclehead started to run, finding a hiding position and started thinking, "Why isn't Black Scythe running? Is he planning to fight against all the goblins alone?" Then the musclehead started climbing a staircase, trying to go to a higher ground, saying, "Even if it's Black Scythe, he will not be able to face against thousands of goblins at a time." As the musclehead reached the top of the building, he noticed hundreds of goblins marching toward Ryu, and Ryu just standing there. He said, "Now Ryu will run with his tail between his legs, and this scene will be a sight to see." Then the horde of bloodthirsty goblins dashed toward Ryu, screaming, and Ryu prepared his Black Scythe. A group of goblins jumped toward Ryu, and Ryu, as cool as ever without breaking a sweat, in a flash, chopped all the goblins. He didn't stop there. Like a killing machine, he continued to chop each and every goblin into small pieces with great force, displaying tremendous strength and precision. The musclehead, on the other hand, was left speechless. Seeing this, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then he thought, as Ryu got a class, that's why he must be so strong. After he obtains his class, then he will beat the crap out of that arrogant bastard. With that, the musclehead left to kill some goblins to level up and obtain a class. He also started to kill a single goblin at a time without any issue, thinking that in no time, he will obtain a class. Suddenly, an arrow whizzed through the air, narrowly missing the musclehead's face. He managed to dodge most of it, but the arrow grazed a small part of his ear. Angrily, he began searching for the person responsible, but in the chaotic crowd of players, it was impossible to identify the shooter. Fuming with rage, the musclehead declared that he didn't know who had attacked him, but once he found the culprit, he would peel his skin off. Before he could finish his sentence, he felt a piercing pain. As he looked back, the spear guy had already thrust his spear into the musclehead's stomach. The musclehead was really angry, so he grabbed the spear stuck in his stomach and with his dagger thrust it into the spear guy, killing him instantly. However, that was just the beginning. One by one, other players began to attack him, and he found himself desperately defending against their relentless onslaught. Even if he managed to survive this battle, he hadn't killed enough monsters to avoid automatic death when the round ended. Amidst the chaos, he spotted a barbarian-like player, Black Flame Dragon, ranked third in the zone. With a cunning grin, the musclehead used his command skill on him, instructing him to protect him at all costs. Meanwhile, Ryu was doing his favorite thing, yes, bullying the goblins. At this point, Ryu had slaughtered 502 goblins, and all his stats had increased by 100% because of the rain of slaughter. And because of the skeleton bone necklace, his stats further increased by 25%. On the other hand, the other players were barely defending themselves against the goblin, and finally, after a hellish battle, the first round got over, and 3,933 players were left, while 936 players died in this time. Then, Ryu slowly approached the battlefield where dead bodies of players could be seen. He was searching for the musclehead, wondering if he was still alive. On the other hand, the musclehead was heavily injured, but his suffering was far from over. With the players no longer distracted by the goblins, they started to attack the musclehead. One player bravely attacked him, but his attempt was swiftly crushed by the combined might of the barbarian guy and Youngmin. Seeing this, the musclehead was thankful that he had those bastards to protect him because of the authority of command. He managed to survive the first round. Then, Youngmin asked the musclehead in concern if he's okay, and seeing that the musclehead was in deep thought. Youngmin followed him, even though he did not use command authority on him. But then, he started groaning in pain as the wound in his stomach was too deep, and he was bleeding heavily. However, before he could even take a sigh of relief, the second wave of goblins began to surge towards them. The goblins started running towards Black Scythe, Ryu. With a serious expression, he did not hesitate to slice the goblins with his scythe. He continued to attack multiple goblins at the same time. The bodies of the dead goblins were piling up on the ground. Then the system notified him that he had reached level 20. His rank had risen from apprentice to regular. He could now use the combination function. He wiped his sweat as he rejoiced in reaching level 20, saying that now he could use the combination function to create unique items that can't be obtained in the store. Then, another window screen appeared before him, displaying important information. The first announcement was about the strengthening of the Death Seal due to his rank increase, now boosted from 100 to 120%. Additionally, he had unlocked a Reaper-exclusive skill called Night of Death, which could create an artificial night within a 500-meter radius. Combining this skill with his Grim Reaper's abilities would double his attack power and increase his attack speed by 50% during the night. This was indeed a formidable combination. After quickly reviewing the screen, the goblins came charging towards him, driven by their bloodthirsty instincts. He welcomed their approach with a confident smile, eager to put his new skill to the test. With a swift activation, Night of Death shrouded the area in impenetrable darkness. The goblins, unable to see through this pitch-black veil, were disoriented and panicked. In the midst of this darkness, Ryu became a reaper of death, precision, and swiftness personified. He systematically beheaded the goblins, causing chaos among their ranks. Their panic escalated as they tried to flee, but in a single sweeping motion of his scythe, Ryu carved through them like a hot knife through butter. When he turned around, a gruesome pile of goblin corpses bore witness to his deadly efficiency. The system chimed in to announce the end of the second wave, giving Ryu a moment of respite. Seizing the opportunity, he opened his in-game shop, eager to spend the gold he had earned from his goblin-slaying spree. He invested in the precise location skill, which granted him the ability to sense every particle within a 30-meter radius. With this newfound skill, He was well prepared for the arrival of the third wave of goblins. As the third wave approached, Ryu remained unfazed. With eyes closed, he moved effortlessly through the goblins, slicing them down as if he were casually sipping his morning coffee. Meanwhile, the musclehead found himself in a dire situation, forced to fend off the goblins while protecting himself despite his severe injuries. The musclehead had been intensely focused on the front, engrossed in the battle before him. However, a sudden eruption of screams from behind shattered his concentration. When he turned around, a horrifying sight awaited him. His subordinates were being mercilessly slaughtered, and a group of aggressive players was advancing, determined to end his life. Arrows rained down upon him, and in a desperate bid to shield himself, he grabbed two of his subordinates and used them as human shields, blocking the deadly projectiles. Now only he and 3 others were left, facing a larger group of players ready to kill them. Realizing that he couldn't win this battle, the musclehead made a quick decision to flee. He started running from the scene, with the players hot on his heels. His only goal was to survive for 1 more hour. If he could do that, he would make it to the next round, as he was already among the top 25%. However, the relentless players chasing him had other plans, and they were determined not to let him live. In his desperate flight, the musclehead encountered Ryu up ahead. Panic overcame him, and he rushed toward Ryu, offering to accept any deal Ryu proposed. He was ready to do anything, from licking Ryu's feet to killing anyone for him. But Ryu merely glared at the musclehead with a cold, deadly look, and firmly stated that he refused to accept the musclehead. As shock registered on the musclehead's face, Ryu went on to explain that he had already made it clear earlier that he didn't care whether the musclehead lived or died. It was none of his business. As Ryu prepared for another round of bullying the goblins, the musclehead couldn't contain his desperation any longer. He started screaming, begging Ryu to save him. In response, Ryu calmly stated that he would have considered taking the musclehead under his wing if he hadn't already used all his authority skill charges. But now, in Ryu's eyes, the musclehead was nothing more than trash. Hearing this, the musclehead felt a surge of frustration and helplessness, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, the other players behind them began to laugh gleefully, relieved that Black Scythe hadn't intervened to save the musclehead. In a fit of intense rage and determination, the musclehead drew his dagger, clutching his wounded stomach with his other hand. He screamed, vowing to take at least 10 people down with him before he met his end. However, at that moment, Youngman appeared from behind, and in a concerned tone, assured the musclehead that he was there to help. Seeing Youngman, the musclehead's face lit up with happiness, and he gave a wide smile. He expressed his confidence that Youngman would come to his rescue and promised to reward him generously once he survived this round. And when he was too weak to fight back, instead of protecting the musclehead, Youngman, being an even bigger piece of shit than the musclehead, delivered a heavy, skull-crushing blow to him, causing him to fly backward with his nose broken. Then, Youngman grabbed the musclehead by his collar while the musclehead was in pain, grinding his teeth. Youngman gave yet another heavy punch to the musclehead's face, causing him to start coughing up blood. But Youngman was even more of a bigger piece of shit than the musclehead. So, Youngman started a barrage of heavy punches all into the musclehead's face. After a few hundred punches, the musclehead was now lying on the floor, blood coming from his nose, ears, and mouth. His one eye got injured, and slowly his vision was going blurry as Youngman glared at the musclehead with a wicked smile. But wait, it was not enough. So today's goal is 4,900 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel from the bottom of your ass. Then Youngman lifted his foot high, and with all his might, bam! He smashed the musclehead's head. The system notified Youngman that he had killed the zone leader. So now he became the new zone leader with the authority skill. Now, seeing Youngman all covered in the musclehead's blood, he shouted in excitement, saying he is the king of this zone now. Then, Youngman started to laugh mischievously, and the first thing he thought was that now that he had the authority skill, he could control Aaron and do whatever he wanted with her body. Youngman, while looking at the dead, lifeless body of the musclehead, said that he would use the authority skill very well, and now the musclehead could rest in peace. Youngman turned back with a proud face and walked toward his friends. He told them that he had promised to kill that piece of shit, and his friends hesitantly replied that they were happy for him. However, deep inside, they were a little scared because Youngman was getting more psycho and perverted day by day. As they saw the musclehead's blood dripping from Youngman's hands, they became even more terrified. Youngman had killed someone barehanded, without any weapon. Now, the other players also started gossiping, realizing that Youngman was indeed the biggest piece of shit in the entire universe. His goal was to kill the musclehead from the start, which is why he had joined the musclehead's team. and now that someone like him had become the zone leader, all the players were getting very angry. They said they had to kill him because leaving someone like him alive would decrease their own chances of survival. But Youngman, for some reason, was not scared at all. He was just laughing with an arrogant smile. Seeing his arrogant smile, all the players prepared to attack Youngman. Then, Youngman suddenly, still with a confident smile, started running somewhere, shocking everyone. And guess what? He went running toward Ryu, shouting his name, and hurriedly asked Ryu if he saw how he killed the musclehead. And now he became the zone leader, and he even had the authority skill. Then Ryu asked, "So what?" Youngman, tapping his chest confidently, asked Ryu if he had made an offer to protect the musclehead because of his authority skill. He explained that he had the authority skill and then promised Ryu that he would do whatever Ryu asked. If needed, he could even wipe Ryu's ass if necessary. Then, Youngman, after saying this, was just very happy, thinking Ryu would accept his offer because he had the authority skill. But Ryu, with an annoyed face, replied that he didn't like Youngman's attitude, which startled Youngman. Ryu continued, saying that if Youngman got on his knees and begged, then Ryu could think about it. Now, hearing this, Youngman got confused and in a state of confusion asked Ryu if he heard what he just said, that he had the authority skill and could use it 10 times. Ryu replied, saying he knew, but Youngman must be misunderstanding something, as the one who was in a dire situation was Youngman, not Ryu. If Ryu really needed the authority skill, did Youngman really think he couldn't get it by killing him? Then Ryu, with a kind smile, explained that he just wanted to protect the musclehead because he was a piece of shit, and he wanted to tease and humiliate him in front of everyone in place of protection. Youngman, being even more of a piece of shit, needed to earn Ryu's protection, so he should get on his knees and bark like a dog 2 times now. As Youngman turned back, he saw all the players glaring at him like hungry dogs ready to devour him. Realizing the dire situation he was in, Youngman turned toward Ryu, and after taking a deep breath, he bowed down in front of Ryu, saying he was Ryu's slave and barked like a dog. "Ruff! Ruff! Ruff!" Then Ryu just stared at him as he barked like a dog for a while with a satisfying look, thinking that he really didn't care about the musclehead. But unlike the musclehead, Youngman did have some value, and he had future plans for him. But before that, he wanted to bully him to his heart's satisfaction. And after begging like a dog, Ryu finally accepted Youngman to come under him. Hearing this, Youngman started bowing heavily with a surprised face, thanking Ryu continuously. Seeing this, Ryu, with an annoyed and disgusted look, said that if Youngman ever even thinks of betraying him like what he did to the musclehead, he will chop Youngman into small pieces and feed it to dogs. With that, Ryu, with a majestic aura, started walking toward the players, leaving them in a state of confusion, wondering what was happening and whether Ryu would really protect Youngman. Some foolish individuals even contemplated attacking Ryu and Youngman together. However, one wise person panicked, warning others not to even think about attacking Ryu. He recounted how Ryu had slaughtered 100 goblins at once and emphasized that they couldn't possibly challenge such a formidable opponent. Before the wise man could finish his sentence, Ryu spoke loudly, asking if some of them wanted to attack him. This sent shivers down their spines, and Ryu continued with a serious expression, presenting them with 2 options. First, they could go and kill goblins to reach the top 25% and survive this round. Then, with great force, he pointed his black scythe toward the players, and with a deadly stare, announced that they could choose to die, and he wouldn't mind. He even jokingly mentioned that it would give him a good warm-up before the next wave of goblins arrived. After hearing Ryu's command, all the players immediately hid their weapons and panicked in a state of fear. They started running away from Ryu as if their lives depended on it. Meanwhile, Youngman was simply amazed. He couldn't help but marvel at how just a single word from Ryu could send all the players into a state of terror, causing them to flee like frightened rats. Youngman started laughing and gave Ryu a knowing look, realizing that when he used to be Ryu's enemy, he had also witnessed just how terrifying Ryu could be. Now, he felt safe with Ryu on his side. As Ryu observed the players battling the Wolfmen, he couldn't help but smile to himself. He thought that now that he had everything he wanted, he could finally begin his grand plan. Ryu called Youngman over, and Youngman happily approached him, addressing him as Sir. Ryu spoke in a deep voice and made a serious request. He asked Youngman to use all his 10 authorities to break the purple relic that all the players were protecting. Youngman was shocked by this command. He remembered that the angel had instructed them to protect the relic at all costs, and failure to do so would result in a heavy penalty. Youngmin was frustrated and puzzled, wondering why Ryu was ordering him to break the relic. Using all his 10 authorities would also mean he couldn't control Arin and engage in any lewd activities with her. Youngmin hesitated, scratching his head, as he asked Ryu why he had to break the relic. Ryu's response was stern, telling Youngmin to shut up and obey his orders. Youngmin then made a request, asking if he could please use only 9 of his authorities and save 1, as he had other plans for it. But Ryu replied in a cold tone, making it clear that he wouldn't repeat himself and that Youngmin had to do as he was told to if he don't want to die. With a sad expression, Youngmin agreed and assured Ryu that he understood. Then Ryu dropped yet another bombshell, revealing that he would now dictate whom Youngmin had to use the authority skill on. As Ryu began reciting the names, Youngmin realized that these were all the names of his friends. He couldn't help but wonder why all of his friends were on the list of people he had to use his command skill on. Youngmin apologized to his friends, explaining that he couldn't deny Ryu's command. He used his authority skill, uttering his friends' names one by one. A strange purple symbol appeared on the heads of his friends, and they started to get mind-controlled. With the final command, break the relic, they succumbed to the mind control. Suddenly, a system notification appeared in front of all the players, stating that the relic was being attacked. Shocked and panicked, the players turned toward the relic and saw 10 people breaking it. In a state of panic, they rushed toward them to stop the destruction. Some players managed to trap a few of the culprits, while others were killed in the chaos. However, before the players could take further action, a crack formed in the crystal, and with a resounding crash, it shattered into small pieces. A massive system window appeared, announcing that the relic had been broken and that they had failed the main quest. As a penalty, the agent of divine punishment would be summoned, attempting to kill everyone for 30 minutes. After that, the round would be over. A sense of horror and panic enveloped the area as players grappled with the gravity of the situation. They questioned who this divine punisher was and what they should do next. Meanwhile, Ryu stood holding his black scythe with a slight smile, confident that everything was going according to his plan. A system window appeared in front of everyone, announcing that a sub-quest would begin, and upon completing it, all players would receive 3,000 gold. As players contemplated this offer, they realized that getting 3,000 gold for surviving the 30-minute punishment was a better deal than the 2,000 gold they were receiving for protecting the relic. This realization led to some optimism among the players. However, Ryu noticed the naive players getting happy and started thinking that the larger reward indicated a more significant threat was coming to attack them. He also considered the reason he didn't break the relic himself, but before he could finish his thoughts, a big system notification appeared in the sky, stating that the 10 players who attacked the relic would receive a substantial penalty, which was a 50% reduction in all stats for those players. Hearing this, Youngmin's friends were left speechless. Some felt depressed, while others were angry, and they started cursing Youngmin, blaming him for their predicament. Youngmin could only reply with a simple sorry, as he didn't know about this penalty. However, deep down, he felt a little relieved as nothing penalty had been applied to him. But before he could finish processing this information, a system notification appeared in front of him, stating that since the zone leader couldn't protect the relic from being destroyed, the zone leader's stats would also be permanently decreased by 50%. At first, Youngmin took his time to comprehend this information, but when he realized what had just happened, he exploded in anger. He began kicking objects nearby, and his friends cursed him while he vented his frustration. Meanwhile, Ryu enjoyed this scene, as he had planned all along to make Youngmin's life a living hell, just as Ryu had experienced himself. Without wasting any time, Ryu opened the system shop and purchased an assassin hoodie and boots with the rest of his remaining gold, which slightly increased his movement speed. Then Ryu opened his combination window, a feature he had gained after reaching level 20, where he could fuse crystals into his equipment to gain bonus stats and abilities. He began the process by placing the skeleton necklace into the combination window and combined it with a mana stone. The system notified Ryu that the combination was successful, and all his stats increased by 1. Ryu repeated this process for all his mana stones, which he had obtained after killing the goblins, enhancing all of his equipment. As Ryu finished preparing himself, a chilling wind suddenly swept through the area, causing panic among all the players. Youngmin and his crew were even more panicked, as their stats had already been decreased by 50%. In contrast, Ryu remained calm and collected, awaiting the arrival of the Divine Punisher. He knew that even for the Divine Punisher, it wouldn't be easy to defeat him. In his previous life, there had been a time when they had failed to protect the relic, and only 500 players had barely survived by fleeing from the Divine Punisher. However, Ryu wasn't here just for himself. He was on a mission to make every holy being into holy shit, and the Divine Punisher was next in line. Suddenly, with a crackling sound, a large crack formed in the sky, and from that crack, an angel with big bright wings wearing a hoodie and holding a large golden staff with a chilling aura appeared. The Divine Punisher slowly descended to the ground, raising his wand up into the sky. Under his hoodie, two creepy eyes stared at the players as he asked, "Any last words?" With that, he tapped his staff onto the ground, and the entire ground started shaking. All the players were hit by a tremendous pressure and could barely stand, while Ryu gazed at the Divine Punisher like an ice cream ready to be licked. Now, a new quest has been issued, and everyone has to survive or dodge the attacks of the Divine Punisher for 30 minutes. The Divine Punisher slowly descended to the ground, raising his wand up into the sky. Under his hoodie, two creepy eyes stared at the players as he asked, "Any last words?" With that, he tapped his staff onto the ground, and the entire ground started shaking. All the players were hit by a tremendous pressure and could barely stand, while Ryu gazed at the Divine Punisher like an ice cream ready to be licked. Then, the purple energy wave slowly started to cover the entire area, and the system notified everyone that the agent of Divine Punisher had cast a restriction field. As the players tried to run from that area, the purple aura formed a barrier, restricting the players from going outside the area. The players started to panic and feel scared as they tried to break the barrier, but their efforts were in vain. So today's like goal is a little high. It's 6,900 likes. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you. Now let's continue. Another system notification appeared, hitting all the players with the news that the stats of those inside the barrier would be decreased by 50%. Ryu observed this from outside the barrier, realizing that 300 people were now trapped inside, and he couldn't break the barrier to save them. The Divine Punisher started to laugh, and with a flick of his wand, thousands of purple auras formed around him. Ryu, with a saddened expression, turned away from the 300 players and said, "So it has started." Just like that, the Divine Punisher launched his attack toward all 300 players inside the barrier. Each and every arrow found its mark mercilessly, despite the players' attempts to run, hide, or defend themselves. The arrows struck them down mercilessly. Then Ryu explained that under the Divine Punisher's domain, he could gain full control over the space and use his arrows just like his own body parts, ensuring that his arrows would hit the enemy no matter what. Suddenly, Ryu positioned himself at the edge of the barrier, stating that it wasn't a big deal for him since he had fought the Divine Punisher countless times before. Standing just behind the Divine Punisher, Ryu explained that now that he was positioned behind the Divine Punisher wouldn't be able to see him. The Divine Punisher lacked ears and could only sense everything within his barrier. With this advantage, as soon as the entire barrier lifted, Ryu, like a venomous snake, leaped high with deadly intent. He used his seal of death on the Divine Punisher, and before the Divine Punisher could react by turning back, Ryu thrust his black scythe into the Divine Punisher's right eye, popping it like a cherry. Golden blood splattered everywhere, and the Divine Punisher started to scream in pain. Ryu elegantly landed on the ground, and behind him the Divine Punisher was still screaming. In just one hit, Ryu had already drained 40% of the Divine Punisher's health. Then Ryu suddenly started running, and in anger, the Divine Punisher tapped his staff on the ground, initiating the formation of his domain expansion barrier. At this point, Ryu had already memorized each and every move of the Divine Punisher. So before the barrier could trap Ryu, he was already outside the barrier and standing behind the Divine Punisher in his blind spot. Ryu explained that as soon as the Divine Punisher saw that no one was trapped under his barrier, he would release it. During the release of the barrier, the Divine Punisher couldn't attack for 2 seconds, and Ryu only needed that 2 seconds. As soon as the barrier lifted, Ryu, with a dead serious look, dashed toward the Divine Punisher, jumped high, charged his black scythe, and in a swift slash, chopped the Divine Punisher's last eye like a cherry tomato. Golden juice splashed all around the place, and now the Divine Punisher was in immense pain. This was the first time in the last 500 years that anyone had even made a scratch on his body. He didn't even know how pain felt, and now both of his eyes were punctured. As Ryu slowly landed on the ground, The Divine Punisher was still crying in pain like a baby, in immense anger. Before Ryu could leave the Divine Punisher's domain, he casted his domain expansion barrier. Now, Ryu got trapped under the barrier, and all of Ryu's stats got dropped by 50%. Sensing Ryu was trapped under his barrier, the Divine Punisher started to laugh wobbly, saying that now he would kill Ryu by piercing thousands of arrows into Ryu's ears and every hole. But Ryu just stood there with a confident look and a slight smile, saying that without the Divine Punisher's eyes, he would no longer be able to land his lightning arrow on an enemy. He explained that first, he had to see his enemy and mark them, and only then would the attack automatically hit the enemy. Now, without his eyes, he was nothing more than a living waste. In his last cry, the Divine Punisher charged his ultimate attack. He summoned thousands of lightning spears, covering the entire barrier with them. But Ryu had had enough playing with the Punisher. In an instant he jumped, activated his black scythe, and had already activated the Seal of Death on the Divine Punisher. Thanks to his skeleton necklace and the title he gained from killing the angel, his stats were now 7.5 times more potent, and with a single slash, Ryu chopped the Divine Punisher left wing. Then, the Divine Protector, still blind, tried to counterattack, but Ryu swiftly, using the staff of the Divine Punisher, jumped even higher into the sky, dodging the attack. Once again, with a swift slash, he chopped off the last wing of the Divine Punisher. As Ryu swiftly landed on the ground, the Divine Punisher was already in immense pain. With this, the Divine Punisher was left standing in silence, wondering what was happening. His job was supposed to be slaughtering players for 30 minutes, and torturing them as much as his heart desired. But this was out of script. Suddenly the Divine Punisher began to tremble and mutter something. Ryu immediately started running away from him. Now, the Divine Punisher was furious, and in a deep voice, he threatened Ryu, saying he didn't know who Ryu was, but now he would chop him into pieces and feed them to holy dogs. Ryu would not have a peaceful death. A system notification then informed everyone that the Divine Punisher had activated his passive skill. He would become invincible and all his stats would be doubled for 10 minutes. On the other hand, Ryu watched this from the side, realizing that this was why he had popped out the Divine Punisher's eyes. Before his death, the Divine Punisher became invincible, and when the Punisher was blind, he was just a punching bag, as he could only land his attacks by seeing his opponent. Then, with a loud scream, the Divine Punisher waved his staff, and multiple small purple portals appeared around him. Deadly light strikes started landing everywhere under the barrier at random places, trying to hit Ryu. However, Ryu, with all his stats multiplied by 7.5x, easily dodged all the attacks with a smile on his face. Finally, the time came as the Divine Punisher's invincibility wore off. Ryu immediately charged toward the Divine Punisher, and before the Punisher could even move an inch, Ryu chopped off the Punisher's head with a cold look. Golden blood started to splatter like a fountain, and Ryu stood there with a satisfying look on his face. The system notified Ryu that he had murdered the Divine Punisher and leveled up 3 times, gaining a total of 12,200 gold. Additionally, as Ryu was the first in history to kill a Divine Punisher, he earned the title, the one who opposes the divinity. Because of this title, when fighting any divine being, he would take 80% less damage from them. Now, Ryu was standing beside the Punisher, and he had finally made the Divine Punisher into a divine milkshake. But it wasn't the end. The system notified Ryu that an additional reward would be given, as he didn't even get a single scratch from the Divine Punisher's attacks. Just like that, 2 items appeared in Ryu's hand. The first item was the skill Radiance, and without wasting any time, Ryu clenched his fist, breaking the seal, and started to absorb the skill. The second reward was a Condensed Ether. Ryu explained that this was called Condensed Ether, and despite all the gold, skills, and level-ups he had gained, the main reason he defeated the Divine Punisher was for this item. It was an important material for crafting a divine-ranked item. Finally, he successfully absorbed the skill Radiance. With this skill, he now had a passive ability. Ryu's intelligence would increase by 1 with each level, and all his divine-type skills would receive a 1% boost with each level. This meant that as he was now level 30, he would automatically have 30 intelligence, and the same applied to his divine-type skills. Now, the Punisher had been turned into a holy shit, and everyone was just standing there cheering and calling Ryu a monster. Some were even calling him their savior, as he had single-handedly slaughtered the Punisher like a vegetable. As the Punisher's body was disappearing, there was a jittering sound, and an angel appeared from behind. Amazed by what she saw, She commented with a, "Wow, amazing." Hearing this, all the players turned back in shock. The angel was floating just above Ryu's head, holding her chest and speaking in a kind voice as she praised Ryu. She couldn't believe that a human had managed to kill a Punisher, even now seeing it with her own eyes. However, Ryu didn't give a shit. He straight up ignored her and was only checking his stats. Noticing that Ryu wasn't responding, the angel playfully came floating closer to Ryu with a smile, folding her hands and suggested doing an interview. She asked Ryu how he even thought of murdering the Punisher when the system clearly stated only to survive for 30 minutes. Ryu, still not turning back and not seeing the angel's face, replied in a cold tone that he killed the Punisher because he wanted to, plain and simple. The angel curiously asked why Ryu took the risk when with his skills, he could have easily survived the round without risking his life. Ryu explained that even though he could have survived the round, he didn't want to bear the burden of seeing countless players getting slaughtered in front of him when there was a chance to save them after killing the Punisher. Now, hearing that, all the players started to see Ryu with respect and admiration. They thought Ryu was a cold-hearted killing machine, but behind the cold-hearted man, there was a kind soul hiding. Hearing this, the angel went into deep thought, saying, "1 minute, humans kill each other, and the next minute, they want to save each other. Humans are really weird." But then she turned her head away, saying it's none of her business. Ryu, with a warm smile, thought to himself that these celestial beings would never understand human emotion. Then the angel cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. With a mischievous smile, she announced her intention to announce the top 25% and eliminate the remaining players. A huge hologram appeared in front of everyone, and upon seeing it, every player was bewildered. Ryu alone had killed 3,600 monsters, and on top of that, he was level 30. The second-ranked player hadn't even killed 1,000 monsters. Ryu was simply too much of a monster. As always, the system recognized Ryu as the #1 ranked player worldwide and rewarded him with a special prize, an intermediate-grade rare ring selection coupon. Ryu didn't waste a single second and used the coupon. 3 rings appeared in front of him: the Ring of Rushing Wind, the Ring of Azure Magic, and the Ring of Resistance. Ryu chose the Ring of Resistance, which increased his luck by 4 and enhanced his resistance by 30% against status effects. This choice was crucial, as acquiring resistance against status effects was only possible by ranking first in round 3. Lastly, the reward for ranking 1 in his zone arrived as always. This time, Ryu decided not to choose the 50% stat boost, stating that in round 4 there were no monsters to kill, making a stats boost a waste of time. Instead, he chose 4,000 gold. While Ryu was busy managing his stats, a chilling and terrifying voice echoed from behind him. The angel, with a joyful expression, announced that it was time for her favorite game, killing the useless player. After some calculations, she grinned and flicked her hand. Just like that, the players who hadn't made it to the top 25% slowly began to disappear, experiencing immense pain. Finally, after agonizing moments, they died, screaming. The scene then shifted, and we saw Shrin waking up from her bed. First, she checked her body for injuries. Then, she slowly got out of bed, and with a flick of her hand, a cute little creature appeared. This creature had a bee-like head, butterfly-like wings, and a bird-like body. The creature landed on her shoulder, and she explained that these cute creatures were fairies. Thanks to them, she had survived round 3, as the fairies worked as shields to protect her and even healed her wound, and took out a purple crystal from her inventory, saying that she had obtained this mysterious crystal while killing monsters. She stood beside the window, pondering whether to give this crystal to Black Scythe and wondering if he would like it. A blush crept onto her face as she thought about it. Meanwhile, as soon as Youngman woke up from his sleep, he grabbed his lantern and angrily threw it into the wall, shattering it. He was sweating and clearly furious because the system had notified him that the penalty had been applied. Now all his stats had been permanently reduced by 50%. Now Youngman was really nervous and worried as he watched his phone ring in his hand. It was a call from his friend, the one on whom he had used his authority skill. After staring at his phone screen for a moment, he finally answered it, his voice chilling. He tried to say hello, but his friend cut him off midway and started cursing him, calling him crazy. Youngman, still attempting to act like he didn't know what was going on, asked his friend what he was talking about. On the other side of the phone, his friend was becoming increasingly frustrated. He couldn't hold back any longer and burst into anger, shouting furiously and continuing to curse Youngman. He accused Youngmin of playing the innocent card after ruining his entire life. So guys, today's goal is 9,000 likes, and I thank you all from the bottom of my ass, from the bottom of my heart for supporting this channel. Now let's continue. He asked how Youngmin could use the authority skill on his own friends, causing all their stats to decrease by 50%. Now, how would they survive in future rounds? Youngmin, attempting to justify himself, replied that he didn't have a choice. Black Scythe himself had given him the order, and if he hadn't followed Black Scythe's command, he would have been killed. So, he claimed he had no choice in the matter. His friend, annoyed and still furious, retorted that Youngmin should have chosen to die rather than harm his friends. He said that someone who, just because they were at risk of dying, would harm their friends was no true friend. Youngmin hadn't even tried to find a way to convince Black Scythe otherwise or explore alternative options. Instead, he had blindly followed Black Scythe's orders and used the authority skill, indicating that he didn't care about what happened to his crew members and friends. His friend told Youngmin that if he wanted to learn about true friendship, he should watch One Piece, and now Youngmin could go and die in a gutter, because they were no longer friends. Youngmin listened to this in silence, but then Youngmin, also shouting and tapping his chest while addressing his friend angrily, replied that he was also affected, as his stats got decreased by 50% because he was the zone leader and failed to protect the Crystal Ruin. However, his friend cut him off mid-sentence and started shouting at Youngmin again, accusing him of playing the I am also a victim card. His friend emphasized that all of this had happened because Youngmin was greedy. Youngmin had been obsessed with getting the authority skill to confront Aaron, and this was all he used to talk about. His friend continued to curse Youngmin, while Youngmin could do nothing but listen with an annoyed and frustrated expression. Then, Youngmin tried to say something about figuring out how to get their stats back, but his friend cut him off once more. His friend stated that, as he had mentioned before, Youngmin could go and die in a gutter, and from that day on, they were no longer friends. His friend made it clear that Youngmin should not call or try to contact him. He warned Youngmin that if they ever met in the real world or the other world, he might be tempted to kill Youngmin out of anger. With that final warning, his friend ended the call, leaving Youngmin standing there silently, glaring at his phone screen. Then, in frustration, Youngmin immediately started dialing his other friend's number, stating that he would command all his other buddies to crush the friend who had just called him. However, each and every one of his friends had already blocked his number, and he was unable to contact a single friend. Frustrated, Youngmin threw his phone onto his bed and glared at it in anger. He said he didn't need anyone to live his life, as only pigs and sheep roam in groups, and tigers move alone. He considered himself a tiger, even though his stats had decreased by 50%. Grinding his teeth, Youngmin vowed to rip each of their body parts one by one, torture them until they begged to die, and then kill each and every one of his buddies, reducing them to pieces of shit. The scene then shifts back to the Imperial Hotel, where the Heavenly Demon is staying. We see the bodyguard bowing his head politely, and the Heavenly Demon, casually dressed in his usual black t-shirt and pants, sitting in his office chair. He complimented the bodyguard for passing the third round and expressed relief that he was alive. However, the bodyguard, maintaining his polite tone, replied that he was just lucky and that he had passed the third round because the monsters were weakened, making it easier to deal with them. The Heavenly Demon then asked the bodyguard about his current level and whether he had managed to obtain a class. The bodyguard replied, still maintaining his polite tone, that he had reached level 11 and had been fortunate enough to acquire the class of Knight. Then the bodyguard said that Aaron had also reached level 11, but she got a rather unique class called Summoner. Hearing the term Summoner, the Heavenly Demon became curious and asked the bodyguard to explain this in detail. The bodyguard raised his hand and, with a serious face, started explaining that, at first, he himself had been surprised. Now, Aaron can summon little creatures called fairies who can cast magical spells. These spells can do things like using skills such as Protection Shield, or even healing minor injuries. Thanks to Aaron's ability, he had been able to successfully hunt and survive the third round. The Heavenly Demon listened in silence. After thinking for some time, the Heavenly Demon, with a smiling face, said to the bodyguard that he should maintain a close relationship with Aaron because she seemed to have a really interesting class. In the future, she might become a very strong and important person. The Heavenly Demon also suggested that if the bodyguard wanted to, he could even date Aaron, as she was actually quite a gorgeous lady. So if the bodyguard managed to become affectionate with Aren, she would always be with them, and their team or forces would grow stronger because they needed more powerful awakeners, as Earth would no longer be peaceful in the future. Upon hearing this, the bodyguard became a little flustered, saying he couldn't do it because he was a virgin and didn't have the courage to be romantic, especially with Aren. He just lacked the confidence. However, Heavenly Demon, with a chuckle, told him he was just teasing about the dating part, as he hadn't seen the bodyguard laugh in a long time. But seeing the bodyguard getting shy indicated that he had feelings for Aren. Heavenly Demon suggested that the bodyguard could try dating Aren. Hearing this, the bodyguard grew a bit worried, realizing that even if he tried, Aren would likely reject him outright. He was certain of it. Heavenly Demon then asked if the bodyguard was still a man, to which the bodyguard replied that he was, but the problem was different. Aren still addressed him with a formal tone, calling him Mr. Bodyguard. Heavenly Demon decided to put an end to the playful banter and urged them to discuss the serious matters at hand. The bodyguard bowed his head and began explaining. He first apologized, stating that he had failed to carry out the Heavenly Demon's order to help and approach Black Scythe. Additionally, he hadn't been able to deliver the message that the Heavenly Demon had intended for Black Scythe. The bodyguard took a seat on a sofa and proceeded to recount everything that had occurred in round 3, starting from the death of the musclehead and covering all the events. The Heavenly Demon listened attentively with a serious expression, maintaining silence throughout the narration. After the bodyguard had explained everything, the Heavenly Demon sat in contemplation, placing his hand on his chin. He remarked that based on the description of the bodyguard, the Divine Punisher seemed like a powerful entity, and even he, the Heavenly Demon, wouldn't have been confident enough to face it alone. The atmosphere turned gloomy. Hesitantly, the bodyguard continued, suggesting that individuals like Black Scythe, who were exceptionally strong and self-reliant, often had significant egos, making it nearly impossible to work together with them. The Heavenly Demon remained silent, wearing a serious expression, contemplating the information. He began to think that Black Scythe's stats must exceed their imagination, and his class, Black Scythe, sounded incredibly formidable, so much so that the Heavenly Demon felt a sense of shame, considering himself strong with his unique class, Dark Knight. With determination in his eyes, he wished to meet Black Scythe face to face and engage in a manly conversation. Then, still maintaining his serious expression, the Heavenly Demon replied that it was not the bodyguard's fault, and they couldn't hold him accountable for the mission's failure. The bodyguard once again apologized for falling short in the mission. The Heavenly Demon, while taking a sip of his cold whiskey with his usual serious demeanor, diverted the conversation away from Black Scythe and asked about the results of tracking down the thugs who had attempted to harass Aren. The bodyguard responded by mentioning that the boss had a nickname, Youngman, although it was unclear if that was his real name. The challenge was that there were thousands of people with the name Youngman worldwide, making it nearly impossible to track them all down. However, assuming he was in his 20s and looked identical to his real-life self, they narrowed the search to Koreans, reducing the pool of suspects to 5 individuals. Upon hearing this, the Heavenly Demon inquired about the current locations of these 5 people. The bodyguard, still a bit nervous, explained that it would take some time to pinpoint their exact home addresses due to the world's current situation, causing delays in the investigation process. Holding his whiskey with a disappointed expression, the Heavenly Demon remarked that he wouldn't be able to locate that individual before round 4, even though he was eager to confront them. The bodyguard refilled the Heavenly Demon's glass with more whiskey and reassured him that there was no need to rush and they could take their time. The Heavenly Demon then asked the bodyguard about his gold reserves, and the bodyguard mentioned that he had 10,000 gold. The Heavenly Demon deemed it sufficient and explained that there was a skill called tracking available in the shop for 20,000 gold, which the bodyguard should learn as soon as he collected enough gold. The bodyguard agreed and expressed his determination to acquire the skill. The bodyguard hesitantly called the Heavenly Demon and mentioned that he had forgotten to mention an important detail. He explained that last month, an individual had purchased a significant number of stocks in the Heavenly Demon's company. The Heavenly Demon, maintaining his usual serious demeanor, inquired about the specific company involved. The bodyguard replied that it was the main company, Heavenly Demon Consulting, which he had been actively working for over the past few weeks. The Heavenly Demon paused for a moment, then set his whiskey glass on the table and asked about the quantity of shares the person had acquired. The bodyguard revealed that the individual had bought all the available shares on the market, and now held a 31% stake in the entire company. Upon hearing this, the usually serious expression on the heavenly demon's face gave way to a mild shock. He exclaimed his disbelief, wondering how one person could purchase 31% of an entire company. The heavenly demon sat on the sofa, deep in thought, contemplating the market value of Heavenly Demon Consulting, which stood at 720 million United States dollars. To acquire 31% of the company, someone had invested a staggering 212.8 million United States dollars. He pondered who this wealthy individual could be, and whether it might be one of his brother's actions. After reflecting for some time, his expression turned serious once more, and he concluded that someone who bought such a significant stake likely intended to become directly involved in the company's management. He picked up his phone and instructed his department head to gather information about the person who had acquired the 31% stake in the company. Meanwhile, Ryu lay on his bed, holding his phone, eagerly awaiting a phone call. He knew that even though he wanted to meet the heavenly demon, he couldn't contact them first. He had to demonstrate that he was the real deal. Ryu was confident that the heavenly demon would contact him any moment now, especially after discovering that someone had bought a 31% stake in his company, which had only started a few months ago and wasn't particularly big or well known. Suddenly, Woonie burst into Ryu's room, shouting loudly, "Brother, what level are you?" Ryu, startled by the sudden door slam, dropped his phone and it hit him in the face. With a slightly red face due to the unexpected impact, Ryu asked Woonie why he was asking this out of the blue. Woonie, with a worried expression, explained that there was a kid who acted all high and mighty, bragging that his brother was a high-level player. This kid and his friends kept making fun of Woonie, saying that his brother was already level 11, had a class, and was very strong, while Woonie and his brother were losers. Upon hearing level 11, Ryu let out a sigh and a playful smile, assuring Woonie not to worry because he was higher level than that. Excitedly, Woonie asked Ryu what level he was, and Ryu began to ponder. He considered whether he should tell the truth, knowing that if he did, Woonie might get into trouble again. With a warm smile, Ryu told Woonie that he was level 12. Hearing this, Woonie's eyes filled with excitement and admiration, and he exclaimed that Ryu was the best in the world. He then asked if Ryu also had a class, to which Ryu replied affirmatively, saying he did indeed have a class. Woonie's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he asked about the name of Ryu's class. However, Ryu simply lied down on his bed, going under the blanket, and playfully mentioned that it was a secret. He added that he would tell Woonie everything when the right time came. Frustrated, Woonie insisted that there should be no secrets between brothers, but Ryu, claiming fatigue, said he needed to sleep and promised to tell Woonie later. Annoyed, Woonie left the room, stating that he would definitely find out Ryu's class when he woke up, and he closed the door in frustration. Then, as Ryu was about to sleep, his phone started to ring, and it was the call of the heavenly demon. Ryu picked up the call, and the heavenly demon introduced himself as the CEO of the company. He inquired if it was a suitable time to talk. Ryu, with a slight smile, decided to play the role of a naive beginner who had just started investing in the stock market. He thought that the more he appeared like a pushover, the more the heavenly demon would let his guard down, making his plan go smoothly. So Ryu replied that it was indeed the right time to talk. The heavenly demon, with a polite tone, asked if Ryu had purchased a large amount of stock in his company, and Ryu pretended to be startled and nervous as he confirmed that he had. The heavenly demon then informed Ryu that, with his recent purchase, he now owned 31% of the company. He expressed his desire to meet Ryu and suggested going for a meal. He proposed a lunch meeting on Friday. Ryu, after a moment of thinking, remembered that on Friday he had an important task. He was planning to make the person who kidnapped Wani on his 7th life regret it, so he politely declined the offer for Friday, citing his prior commitments. Instead, he suggested Saturday, which the heavenly demon agreed to. With that, the phone call ended. Ryu, now wearing a confident smile, muttered to himself, "Tomorrow is Friday, and it's the day when Wani's kidnapper will face justice. I'll make so many holes in that bastard's body that he won't know from where to fart and from where to take a breath." So with this, the episode ends here. Write part 10 inches in the comments. Thanks for watching.